And as always, or more formally say, welcome everyone to our call. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so just to give you a heads up on the agenda, when he joins us, Dave Lawrence will talk about DELEG, or short for delegations, a way of, well, my words, not his, so give a bit more sort of future proofing, expandability to the DNS. And then we'll sort of talk about some recent developments and so on. But whilst we're waiting for Dave to join, we might perhaps go into the recent developments, and then we'll pause at the point when Dave does join. So just a few things I've picked up from the last week or so. Interesting article on the APNIT blog from Rowena Shu, looking at who's part of the DNS Abuse Institute, who writes about, unsurprisingly, some of the challenges in identifying, categorizing, and then ultimately measuring DNS abuse. So I thought she made some interesting points in that. Topically, there was also a step-by-step guide to how to enable or indeed disable DNR within Windows 11, which I was a bit surprised to see that, to be honest, but it's good to see that that's been sort of picked up and being written about. Probably the other one I mentioned sort of particularly was an article is actually penned by one of the team from the SIDN labs, but it was actually based on a paper co-authored with people from NLNet labs as well. Looking at some proposals from ICANN, they recently published 5 potential new naming schemes for the root servers of the DNS, and the paper covers the challenges posed by each of those 5 different schemes, just to highlight some of the practical considerations of those. So if you have a spare few minutes, those of you with interest in such matters may find that to be of use. Actually, the other one I mentioned at the bottom of the page, just because I was a bit surprised, there's a paper from DNS Filter, or blog post from DNS Filter, explain the differences between DNS security and protective DNS, but they decided to use the acronym DNSSEC to stand for DNS security, which was a bit confusing because they definitely didn't mean DNSSEC by any normal definition. As you can see, they defined DNSSEC in their article as a huge umbrella term used to describe methodologies and strategies to protect internet infrastructure, which I think is somewhat broader than DNS security extensions. So not sure why they chose that particular acronym, but there you are. The article was interesting, but maybe not the choice of acronym. Jeff Huston did a write-up of some of the various DNS related discussions at the ITF meeting in Prague all of a month ago. It seems like a long time ago. So if you want a sort of summary to remind you what was covered, Jeff has kindly provided that. I mean, there's a couple of cybersecurity articles. The one at the bottom I just mentioned, though, given the interest last week in the discussion on blockchain-based name services, rather helpfully, Top DNS, that's the Echo Top DNS initiative. They've got a webinar next week looking at addressing, evidencing, and mitigating abuse in Web3. So sort of in the same space a bit. So that was worth highlighting as that is coming up. Just moving on, a whole bunch of other items of interest. I'm not going to go through all of these. You'll be pleased to know take far too long, but the various things caught my eye, not really DNS relevant, but so for example, towards the bottom part of the page, France has banned ministers from using WhatsApp and Signal, and they need to use a French-based alternative, which is sort of a logical development of digital sovereignty, I guess, taking that to its ultimate sort of conclusion, I suppose, at a national level. Various other pieces, one from the NSA, NCSC, CISA, and others about guidance for securing AI, which is quite timely, which is no doubt why they pushed it out, and various other things. There's a fun one from AdGuard at the top of the page. They've had a look at Brave's new AI chatbot to try and get a sense of how private it is. Although, to be fair, I think more of the text is about their experiences using it and whether it's actually answering the questions that they asked it, which they mainly didn't seem to get good answers, but never mind. Okay, I just pause there. Right, there's still no sign of Dave. I just double checked, make sure I haven't had a message from him in the last couple of minutes if he's having a technical problem, which is entirely possible. She doesn't seem to have done. I'm picking up on a message, I won't say from whom. I know Dave co-authored. Oh yeah, and there is a recording available which I could play, I guess. But a question though, as a number of people. Oh, so Ralf, have you got an update? Do you want to come in? Sorry, I didn't see your hand raised.
No, I don't have an update from Dave. I mean, I could offer, given that I'm also one of the authors of that, to probably give a not as nice presentation as Dave could be, but I mean, at least we would have the content. I'll probably butcher a bit.
If you're up for that, that would be really kind. If you wouldn't mind doing that, Ralf, if you're happy to.
Yeah, I mean.
Do you have his slides, or do you want me to get his slides?
Yeah. No, I just downloaded the slides while we were talking about it.
Fantastic. Right, okay, in that case, let me stop sharing. So you can do that.
Oh my God, that's all changed. Okay, I'll see if that works.
I see Vic has helpfully put the URL for the slides in the chat, so thank you for that, Vicky, as well as the recording. So we have the ghost of Dave, if not Dave himself. You can catch the recording.
Yeah, let me. Oh crap! I'll need to.
I can put them on my screen if it's easier, Ralf.
That might be easier because it looks like Zoom sort of has changed the way it's changed. It shares things. I used to be able to just share one of my screens, but now I can't. But yeah, if you put them up and then I'll kind of tell you when to forward, that would also be working.
Yeah, just give me a second whilst I load it. Resize it. Okay, and then okay, you should see Dave's title slide.
Yeah, see it.
Okay, right. I assume you want me to go ahead from that one.
Yeah.
Oh,
not that far.
There you
just go. That one. So I mean, I'm just going to butcher that probably because Dave's much better in that. But the DNS sort of is like a mechanism where one turtle tells you how to find the other turtles, and I mean, it's slow, but it works and it's sort of reliable. So the root turtle tells here's the UK turtle, and UK turtle tells the COEK. So that all works fine, but you only talk about turtles. So next slide. So what if you want to talk to tigers? And tigers being sort of a different transport protocol here. So it would be good to be able to do that, because normally the turtle says, well, the root turtle talks to the UK, and the UK turtle then says, well, I only can talk to turtles, so but I want to talk to tigers. So that sort of is not possible, and that is sort of one of the reasons behind DELEG. So if you go to the next slide. So this is pretty much, in DNS terms, what it is. It's a record that delegates, therefore the name DELEG, to something else. And the difference between the regular NS record that we currently have for this is that this is based on SVCB. So we can actually have additional parameters for that. And then we go into more detail that on some slides. So next slide. And yeah, I mean, this is, I can't recall the joke that Dave made with that, but I think you want to use cockroach initially, and that's probably worse. But the thing is that DNS has evolved, and one of the things when we can't do when we extend DNS, we sort of can't break everything. So we need to make a way to make it sort of compatible or extensible. So on the next slide. So this is pretty much what happened. There, at the IETF in Prague, there were Peter Spacek convened lots of people, and I think he started talking to me about it at the DNS org that was before, and really try to get people to come to this event and then talk about it, because, and then we sat over a big round table and kind of discussed things. And the idea was, well, we want to have something where we really can evolve and innovate afterwards. So not just have something, I mean, a lot of the solutions that problems so far were hacks that which were just solving that problem, but we want to have a big bang, so to speak, and have that be capable of evolve stuff in the future, even though the big bang only is happening now. So, and next slide.
Yeah.
So we discussed this, and we came to kind of the idea was, well, we need to pretty much do that within the delegation system, because DNS is delegation, and that's, if you do something at the delegation point, that's really what for resolvers is the easiest to catch up. So it's a natural thing to have that. And it looks like Tim April, while he still was working for Akamai, did something in 2020, and we presented it then, I believe, at the Deprive working group, and it was, nobody looked at it. But the similarities really between what we discussed there at the IETF and what was in the draft were so striking that I just kind of took the draft, did a search and replace, and that's became the basis pretty much for the discussions we are now having currently on the ORAC MetaMost chain. So you see here the parameters that you can have, and some of them are now so really within the record and don't require an additional section, like the IP addresses that are kind of delivered with the record and can be signed at the parent, so you can trust them. And then go to the next slide. So these are the key features that we kind of discussed up. We wanted to discover the delegation during the normal resolution flow. So we don't want to have any special things or any additional queries that we require to actually get new stuff. And I mean, because a lot of the people that were there disliked the unilateral probing draft that is currently in the Deprive IETF working group, because we don't want to have additional records sent for maybe nothing. And Probing pretty much is that. So we want to discover it during the normal resolution front. And of course, it has to be compatible with old resolvers. We cannot do changes that will break old resolvers. And that's something of the work we all have to do. And I mean, the SVCP stuff that became RFC 9460 just a couple of weeks ago really kind of enabled us that, because that is something that is well supported in the DNS community these days and is an easy extensible mechanism that we can sort of put additional stuff on. So if we say one day we'll have a total different wire protocol, we'll just put an SVCP parameter there, and then every resolver that understands it will kind of use that. The other thing we said is pretty much one of the sins, or not sins, but one of the gotchas that I kind of drives me and maybe others also nuts, is that in the DNS, usually we are very good in kind of delegating stuff and having one source that is authoritative for it, with the exception of the DNS record. I mean, theoretically, it's authoritative at the child, but the resolver really discovers that the parent. So we have two sources of that, and the kind of how do you say that, the disbalance or the problems that here that they are not always in sync caused huge problems. And if you talk to anybody who has done DNS and has not discovered them, then he has not done DNS, because that always causes problems, and it's kind of like annoying. So we said pretty much, we'll solve this. The DELEG will be parent side only, and it will not require any sort of special processing. I mean, other than the regular stuff we have to do with delegations, put in the authority section, what have you. And to solve the problem that a lot of other people were looking into, how do we actually can make sure that we are directing people to a certain set of parameters instead of just putting them all in the parent? Well, we have interaction. So, and of course, DELEG is only kind of authoritative, or is only working for that one delegation point. And at any delegation point, you have to then recheck if you're using DELEG or regular DNS. So let's go to the next slide. So this has an example for indirection, which means that all the parameters that you have will actually be in the child zone, but the child zone will be kind of, has to be out of domain, because otherwise you can't can't use that. And it uses the regular SVCP type 0 priority that then just delegates to, in that case, config to the example, and the actual example zone will then have that. And one of the things we are thinking about and is that maybe if we do that, we have a secure signed DELEG record at the parent, and then the child could actually have the DS record, and then that would mean that kind of providers could actually have their own keys updating without requiring interaction with the parents for their customers. So that's one of the ideas that DELEG could enable, that, I mean, also probably have to fleshed out. And next slide. So this is the idea how to maybe use DELEG to tell that the server for this domain actually is using dot, and here's sort of the key material that you can validate the connection from. So currently, I mean, none of this is possible. I mean, we know that some people do out-of-band stuff, but that's not possible to do within regular DNS, other than probing, which again, there's no authentication. I mean, anybody, any man in the middle can pretty much, if you probe, spoof that, and then you'll believe you're talking to someone and you don't. So that's why I think probing is not a good idea. So this would actually then have the authentication of it, and we have a draft that is, I mean, that is specifically to that. And then the next slide. And that is something I hinted earlier. I mean, we can just use that same mechanism and invent a totally new wire protocol for DNS without changing anything, because it will just have the SVCP record, DNS product equals 2, and then the resolver knows, okay, I'll need to talk to that server with DNS protocol 2 if it supports it. If not, then you can use any of the other DELEG records, or if all hell fails, use an S record. So that's the kind of fallback mechanism also go there. So these are the ideas. A lot of them need to be fleshed out and probably be more designed. If you can go to the next slide. So the current idea is to have to submit 3 drafts, not just 1, just 3, because we want to have a core definition that really is just from the DNS perspective what needs to change. Then 1 will be the transport, because that's already a use case that people are asking for. And the third one will be the secure indirect delegation. That's the third use case that we have identified and that people at the kind of hackathon had big interest in. There also probably needs to be some work done on EPP. I can't talk much about that because I know nothing about EPP. But I mean, there are other people actually actively looking into that. And we had, at the hackathon, we had participation from VeriSign, NickAT, DNIC. So we had a couple of large registrar trees and also registrars that were interested in doing that work. So next slide. So this is kind of like the support. I think it's also in the document. These are the people that actually already contributed to the document and were at the hackathon and kind of discussed it and had lots of beer and dinner and lunch after that. Also, so there's been a lot of discussions already going on, and well, of course, have to socialize it more and tell people more about it. And we also have to do a 0.0 draft first, but we're working on that. So next slide. So that's some of the work we have to do probably before, or some of it we have to do before. So we have actually discussed it multiple ways. They're currently also described in the draft, which we're probably going to boil down to the one way once we do the testing. We believe that these records, the additional DELEG records, will be ignored. But we have to verify that. And we have to verify that, A, for the kind of known resolvers, and then we probably have to do some kind of bigger test to actually kind of get the others also. There's also discussions on the GitHub if we should require DO53. I don't think so, because I mean it's DNS, baby. It's 53 by default.
Do you talk about cards? But
yeah, what I did say you need to do is.
All right.
Sorry, I think someone unmuted accidentally there. Ralf, carry on.
Okay. Yeah, and then there's the question, what should happen with some of the, should we do an EDNS option? What should happen if I do a queue type for DELEG? And there's a bunch of DNS things that need to be worked out before we probably do a 0.0. And the sideways delegation, that's something I'm not very fond of, but some authors think that it's still, it would be good to kind of have something that doesn't require full DELEG integration at a TLD or parent level, but I don't think that's really, and then there's bike shedding and what have you. And yeah, I think the next 2 slides I really can't say anything about it because they were, but we can probably come to questions and comments now, and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Ralf, for doing that. And there's a question. Yeah, Vicky's asked a question in the chat.
It's not really a question. It was just sort of a snarky comment.
Sorry.
It was DLZ, right? The DNS look-aside zone. Wasn't that DLZ?
Yeah.
I'm losing my acronyms. Anyway, I hope that's not what you're contemplating.
That's not what I'm contemplating, but there's. I don't.
I think that's
I don't
what
want
it
to
was
go
like.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. We've been burnt by it. So let's not do it.
DLV,
Yeah, I'll
that's
agree
right,
with it.
DLV. Sorry,
Yeah, so,
yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
So, any other comments or questions or observations anyone has? So, initial reactions if you hadn't got to the presentation previously or weren't at the hackathon. And just while people are thinking, I mean, it seemed to be well received from what I could tell at RIPE. Ralf, I think you were there, so you'll be better
Yeah.
placed than me to.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting question that I think Eric asked, which was where this might land in the ITF. And I think Dave suggested he thought DNS ops, but possibly with a BOF required for some of the activity. So we sort of seem to be hedging a bit. That sort of felt like I don't know if DNS ops isn't one of Eric's working groups or not, but I don't know if you had any thoughts or if it's too early really.
No, we actually, so we had a kind of authors call last week. Yeah, last week. And we discussed it, and I still have on my list of things to do to talk to the DNS working group chairs and Eric about that, because I don't think we should do a additional working group, because stuff will be sort of, I mean, this is a DNS problem. There used to be DNSX and DNS up, and then DNSX was shut down, and then DNS up inherited all the kind of DNS problem. And I agree that DNS up has too much work, but it still is a right working group. So we'll see. I mean, this is something that's kind of, how do you say, the process question. I don't think it's actually a technical question, but we'll need to sort it.
Yeah.
And I mean, so the other thing, currently the discussion on this is happening on Mattermost, DNS org Mattermost. So do we have a link to that? I don't think so. Yeah, so I'll see if I can find it and then maybe send it to you, Andrew, so that you can add that to the to the mailing, because that's where the discussion is happening at the moment. Some is happening on GitHub also, which I'm not sure if that's a good idea. So ideally, we want to have discussions on a mailing list, and I'll need to really talk to the DNS op chairs now that we can maybe use that mailing list, because I think it's appropriate.
So anyway, I'll post what I think is the correct link for the Mattermost chat.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, yeah, there's plenty in there. I know I looked at this a couple of weeks ago, and it looks like there's a lot more since then. Yeah, so that's definitely worth a look for anyone that has an interest to. Remind me, can anyone join Mattermost? I think.
Yes, anyone can join Mattermost. Not a problem at all.
Yeah. It's a pretty straightforward user interface, I think. Complex than many, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's less complex than GitHub, that's for sure. Okay, any other sort of questions or comments for Ralf at this stage? Is the intent, Ralf, putting you on the spot, yeah, I won't hold you to the answer, but is this something that's likely to sort of land for in Brisbane, do you think, for the...
So the idea currently is to have a 0.0 before the IETF, and maybe even before the IETF, because at the moment, I mean, we discussed this amongst our authors, but it would be great to re-engage a larger group into that before Brisbane. So maybe end of January have not sure if we call it an interim or something. I mean, have a larger group session about that, because by then we hopefully have done some tests and have some more answers to the questions that we currently have, and then can do a 0-0 before Brisbane. I mean, that's definitely the goal.
Yeah, which makes sense. Obviously, you're at the mercy of the working group chairs at that point, but it seemed like a reasonable thing to include on the agenda if the draft's available for then, certainly. Albeit, I know there was an awful lot of material on the 2 DNS op sessions in Prague, so it seems to be content rich at the moment in the working group. You might also want to think about a side meeting, perhaps, to give you a little bit more time for a wider discussion for anyone that's interested.
Yeah, definitely.
Kurt seems to be, I think that's a positive comment. Extension of DNS to scale the internet. I think from the tone of Kurt, your earlier comment as well, you seem generally supportive of the whole idea, which is good. Okay. Anyone else?
I guess there's sort of a provision for it in the the expert review process and everything, but I almost feel like, just speaking personally, every new idea I've had for the DNS has turned out in retrospect to have been a bad idea. I feel like we need like a red team to look at every one of these and say, how could I abuse this? And I don't just mean like security considerations, but just like it feels ungracious to go and piss all over somebody's proposal, but it seems like I don't know, just looking back at, I haven't even been involved with the DNS for as long as many of you. I've only been doing this for a little over 10 years, and I don't know, so many of the great ideas turned out to kind of stink after a while.
Yeah, and I mean, we'd already discussed some of the stuff, and we discovered some kind of not problems, but just some challenges that we are now trying to work around or to kind of integrate into the proposal. So yeah, definitely. If somebody thinks it's a bad idea and can tell me why, then I'm totally willing to listen.
So you're thinking, Vicky, of a sort of red team type approach to?
Well, actually, so I sort of feel like if I think it's a good idea, there's probably something wrong with it. So.
Yeah. But I guess despite go back to the turtles analogy, despite everything, thus far the DNS seems to have stood up to the various improvements in quotes. But yeah, I suppose given it's pretty critical to the whole ecosystem.
Right. I haven't really thought this through yet, but Ralph, is there a way then that, like, say an individual TLD might decide that they want to use an alternative route, that they could just sort of hijack everything and plug in?
It's the same delegation. So we don't change the delegation point. We don't change the data. The whole data structure. We don't change the RRR model. It's really just a different record for the delegation. And the NS record will work for legacy resolvers. And the new resolvers that are capable of understanding DELEG will use DELEG because of the additional features that it has. There's no change. There's no capability to actually redirect someone to root or what have you. That's not possible.
Okay, I'm just all right. As far as the red team, I'm done.
Yeah, I think Kurt does a good job. It's really a smarter NS record. That's what it is.
Okay, so I'm kind of running off of what Vicky said, attempting to think. So this is part of my understanding too. Let's say the parent zone delegated to the child zone to say the child is offering dot, and that's going to be on TCP port 853, but the child's not running that. It will just fall back to the the regular normal delegation, right? To
No.
DO53.
No. So the thing is, if sort of the parent indicates that the child supports DELEG, then this delegation point has to be run over any of the DELEG configurations. You can have multiple DELEG configurations, like we have with FVCB. You can have a dot, a DO, and you can even do DO53 if you want to have that fallback. That's possible. But if you have DELEG and the resolver supports DELEG, it will use DELEG. If the resolver does not support DELEG, then it will use a regular NS stuff.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Certainly sounds like that interim sort of meeting or something along those lines, Ralph, would be a good thing. Give people a chance to sort of think about the implications, and then perhaps have a discussion in the lead-in to if it's in DNS Ops or wherever. That'd be quite useful if possible, and or a side meeting, as I said, maybe in Brisbane as well. I can see Kurt has added a comment, but it's independent. If the child does support a certain set of features, it's just informs about more options to try. Right. Okay.
Yes, but in order to get secure delegations, DELEG has to inform about all the possible kind of downstream used options, and one of it can be DNS53, which will then happen to be functioning just like DNS53, but with the DELEG record and the name in the DELEG record rather than the NS record's name, which, I mean, ideally should be identical, really. But yeah, the fallback is only for those who don't understand it. So yeah, I mean, that I understand what Kurt means. I mean, do we have to, and that's sort of the discussion we had earlier, do we need to explicitly require the 53 or not? So the idea was, and that's up for discussions. I mean, we haven't decided yet, but the original idea was to sort of have DO53 by default, but then use the mandatory parameter of SVCB to indicate if you only want APLN dot or doc or whatever in that case.
So discussion whether you have a sort of hard fail or not, or can fall back to 53. Yeah.
So I would invite Kurt to come to the interim or have the discussion mailing list.
Yeah, sounds like Kurt and Vicky and Josh and others will have plenty to add to a useful discussion. Fantastic. Well, look.
There was the hackathon with RIPE as well, and I can tell that this is an absolutely important thing because it's difficult to locate the servers that are not on 53. That's the main problem to tackle, I would say.
Yeah, we have, but they have to be defined. They have to be ready for it. Yeah.
Right, well, let's draw on there. Ralf, that's fantastic. Thank you for stepping in at zero notice and channeling your inner tail to bring this to life. It's always a good test, see if someone really understands it or not, even though their name's on it. Can you pick up somebody else's slides and talk to the topic without any forewarning, which you did extremely well. Oh, sorry, Kurt, you've got it. Oh no, you're clapping. Sorry. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's then move on. So thank you, Ralf, for doing that. And I hope Dave is okay. I'll reach out to him afterwards. Just it might be because of the time zone thing. That may have, because I think the US is now in sync. Probably happened a few weeks ago, actually. Thinking about it, no, it probably isn't that, but maybe just something happened. Right, let me go back to share my slides and bring us back on. So I've sort of talked about some of the recent developments, and I just put up some other stuff that caught my eye. And we've talked to that principally, but there's a few things there which are of just a general interest to me, if no one else. I should say, by the way, if anyone wants me to highlight anything that's caught your eye, by all means, just drop me an email during the week, and I'll happily add those to the list. Quick reminder on calls for papers, workshop proposals, and other things. So if you're planning to go to FOSDEM, there's a DNS dev room. I think it's the day before the event starts, if I remember rightly. It's a while since I looked at this, but if you're interested in that, have a look at the link, because the deadline is the 8th of December, so you've got to the end of this week to respond. We've just passed the deadline for OARC 42, by the way, which we talked about last week, so I think that's now passed. I don't think it's been extended again, as far as I'm aware. And then in December, we've got various things coming up. As you can see, Morg, Nanog, Eurodig has got a call for issues, and the one I've highlighted because it came to my attention this week, IGF 2024, which is towards the back end of next calendar year, has got a call for thematic inputs with a deadline of 31st December. So you've got various things coming up through this month, in addition to all the many other things happening this month. So do bear those in mind if there's any of those that you want to put in your point of view on. And then the last event that I'm aware of this year, I'm sure there are plenty more, but is the Global Tech Summit, which is running in New Delhi from today through Wednesday. Very busy agenda, actually. I had a look at it a couple of weeks back. I think they've got about 10 hours of content each day for 3 days, so with a different theme on each day. So more on the policy side, but might be worth you having a look at that. But after that, the next one that I know of, certainly the next one I've got on my schedule, is OARC 42 in Charlotte. And you'll remember, we've had this discussion a couple of times, Nanog 90 has moved from the 3 days before OARC to be the 3 days the other side of the weekend, also in Charlotte. So you can go to Charlotte for both, but you have a weekend in between the two, rather than it being Monday through Friday to cover the two things, and then stuff kicks in as per normal, and would be sort of pretty much from the start of February onwards. I've not really seen much in January event wise, so there's a whole bunch of stuff there. But as I say, after the event this Monday through Wednesday, then there's a gap through to the start of February. Registration has opened, by the way, for OARC 42. I think in the last few days. So, and I think ITF 119 in Brisbane, registration is due to open this week at some point. So that should be opening shortly. Okay, in terms of our schedule, just a quick reminder, Warren has kindly agreed to talk about QR code based attacks, QR phishing, quishing, is that what it's called? I don't know. Which came up in our discussion last week. I think Warren foolishly put something in the chat about it, and then kindly volunteered to cover it. So we'll talk about that next week. And then tentatively, I'm just waiting for Carolina to confirm our last call of this calendar year. We'll talk about Internet Standards Tracker, as well as potentially Peter's Christmas karaoke, although he's been noticeably absent on the call every time I've mentioned it so far. And then unsurprisingly, we don't have a call on the 25th of December, 1st of January, so their next one back will be the 8th of January. And that's where I've tentatively put in a reprise of the presentation I mentioned earlier about DNSSEC non-deployment, which and the proposal to, does it need to be like an operator's sort of guide, almost deployment guide to go with a standard, something which came up in one of the presentations, immediately before the DELEG presentation in the DNS working group at RIPE last week. So I've asked Ed from ICANN if he will be prepared to come onto the call to maybe reprise that and then have a bit more time than was available at RIPE for discussion. And I think that's it from me. So let me stop sharing my screen and just open up and see where we're on any other business. So is there anything else that anyone wants to raise on the call? So over to you all to see if you do. As always, raise your hand, just unmute or pop something in the chat if that is easier, and you do. And as always, I'll give it a minute or so to see if anyone does. Just while waiting, as Ralph's image is just in my top left corner, given he spoke most recently. It's quite a youthful photo, I have to say, Ralph. Very fetching. You're on mute, in case you were commenting.
Yeah, I look much worse today, so maybe I should change the photo.
Happens to us all, to be fair, Ralph.
Yeah.
I still have somewhere a travel pass with a photo which I took when I was 19, which doesn't look very much like I do now, I have to say. Yeah, it's a whole decade has gone past, and I've not aged well. Yes. Anyway, right. Well, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, and no one's got their hand raised. So I'm assuming nobody does have any other business. So, with sort of thanks again, Ralph, for stepping in. That was brilliant to do that. Hope that was useful, everyone, and we'll get you thinking about the implications of DELEG. And I guess, Ralph, if you do get an interim scheduled, drop me a line or get one of the team to drop me a line. I'll make sure that we highlight that, because I suspect you get quite a few takers of people wanting to come on to the discussion whenever that is.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And with that note, have a fantastic week, everyone, and look forward to conversation on QR code-based attacks same time next week. So see you all then. Thanks all.